In Persona 5, the protagonist Joker is considered a very reliable guy by his peers, and, especially by his teammates, a leader whom without no missions could be completed. Also blessed with unlimited potential and an overwhelming power. But how true is this actually? That's what I will find out as I try beating Persona 5 Royal with only Joker and Arsene. Let's go over the rules of this challenge. Only Joker is allowed to do any action during battle. Teammates are only allowed to guard and must be removed from the party for mandatory battles when able. I will remove them during normal battles as well, but I will keep a party member for holdups when necessary. However, I will be banning all-out attacks. Additionally, the use of party member skills outside of battle will be allowed. The only persona Joker can use in battle is Arsene, and I will not be using the DLC items, as I believe they will trivialize the early game. I will, however, allow the use of the DLC personas, but only if I can craft them. The game will be played in the hard difficulty because, although dealing more damage on average compared to Merciless, the extra damage from technical crits and weaknesses, along with the extra money and the XP, make in my opinion hard the harder difficulty. I will be playing in the new game file, and the challenge ends when we reach the credits of the true royal ending. With the rules out of the way, let's begin. We start the game in the middle of escaping a casino. We fight the enemies chasing us, get saved by a mysterious girl, and get caught by the police. We choose our difficulty and name, and begin recounting our journey to Sai. Our adventure starts with the first day of school, where we are already getting lost with Ryuji and end up in the prison of a castle. There, we are greeted by Kamoshida, the ruler of this palace, and a PE teacher at the school that has been abusing his students. He starts attacking us, and in self-defense, Joker awakens to Arsene, our one and only persona we will be using for the rest of the challenge. We save Ryuji and make our escape. Along the way, we meet a weird looking cat named Morgana, get out of the palace, and finally we reach the school. We go to the castle again the next day to find evidence of the abuse Kamoshida is involved in. On the way out, we get surrounded by the enemy, and Ryuji awakens to his persona to aid in our escape. Joker, however, does not need any help, and proceeds to easily solo the fight. That is what I would like to say, but this fight is one of the hardest in the whole challenge, as it requires an insane amount of luck. I can consistently defeat one of the Bicorns, but to even have a chance, it has to be done in 2 turns, which means no missing bullets and cleaves. In addition, we also need good dodge and targeting luck, as Joker will always be attacked in the first turn and also dies in 2 hits. Fortunately, the enemies will mostly target Ryuji and Morgana during the fight. With this, the strategy, if you can even call it that, is to kill one of the Bicorns in 2 turns, kill the next Bicorn in 3, and finally deal with Eligor. Alongside this, we need Joker to either not get targeted or to do some dodges. Preferably, we would also have Ryuji still alive against Eligor and heal him when he is 1 hit away from death. In my winning attempt, I had Joker dodge the first Bicorn attack and get hit by Eligor instead, receiving less damage, therefore being able to use more cleaves. So, with 5 HP left, we win the fight while only attacking with Joker. We leave the palace and start the chariot and full confidence. Out of the party members, Ryuji's confidant is basically the most useful. It both unlocks the gym to raise Joker's stats, and also at rank 7, we get the ability to insta-kill enemies, cutting down the time required to grind the XP significantly. Kamoshida's abusive behavior gets worse, to the point one of the students tries to take her own life. Because of this, we confront Kamoshida once again, get threatened with expulsion, and go back to the palace, this time to try to change his heart. However, we mistakenly drag on with us, who later gets captured and awakens to her persona. Contrary to Ryuji, An's awakening fight was much easier. Belphegor didn't target Joker much, and we spam Heihas until we win the fight on our first try. We escape again, An joins the team, giving us another healer so we can spend more time grinding, and we can finally start the mission to change Kamoshida's heart. The first part of the palace is the most annoying to get through. Arsene's level got reset during the fusion tutorial, and, depending on the enemies, Joker can go from 100 to 0 in a single turn. So, I decided to take the first day slowly for Arsene to catch up to the enemy's level, and as soon as we are out of SP, we leave the palace. On the next day, we start the Chemist Confidant, resupply, and continue with the mission. We progress some more, and it's time for the Archangel boss fight. This one is really easy. The boss always does the same sequence of charge, cleave, and stare, and we'll always target Joker last. So we just spam cleaves, heal Ryuji once, and as long as we don't miss, Well, one attack may not make much difference, maybe if you don't miss anymore. Maybe you can debuff his accuracy so he misses his attack on Joker. Yeah, the first attempt didn't go so well. On the next try, we managed to not miss any attack and finish Archangel with just 3 HP left. We spent the rest of the day grinding to unlock Dream Needle, our final level up move. Now that we can put enemies to sleep, I am much more confident to start the Eligor fights to get the keys. As long as we put them to sleep somewhat consistently, our damage output is high enough that we can defeat them before they target Joker. I also attempted the Wheel Seat fight. This boss likes to spend some turns doing nothing and mainly targets Sun with its strong attacks. We are not really in much danger, but with Joker's low damage output, this turns into a very long fight. The main strategy is trying to put the boss to sleep and follow up with a double Qliph. This seems to work for the most part, but when the boss reaches half health, he starts healing himself, and because of the sleep status, he out-heals our damage. Fortunately, the boss basically stops attacking during this phase, so we forgo using Dream Needle and instead fish for crits with Qliph, and before long the fight is done. As a reward for our troubles, we receive the ability to put a healing spell on any ally. With everything done, we reach the treasure and get ready to fight Kamoshida. In preparation for this fight, I raise the party level to 11 and Arsene to level 8, stocking up in as many healing items as possible. For the fight itself, we need to rush through the first few phases, as these are the ones where Kamoshida deals the most damage. First, we spam Heihas on both Kamoshida and Trophy until the latter gets destroyed. This part is the most inconsistent, as it just takes Kamoshida to double target a party member and they will basically go down. We cannot afford this, as we need to save as many items as possible for the last phase. Next, we have the volleyball phase. To get through this one, Joker, and ideally at least one party member, need to be at max health to survive multiple smashes, as we need some time to defeat Shadow Shiho. If we get through the Shiho phase, we heal Ryuji and Morgana, as from my attempts Kamoshida never targets Sun during the last phase, and we enter the longest part of the fight. There simply is no strategy here, we just attack and heal when necessary. At our current level, we can sometimes reach the last phase, but keep running out of items just before finishing Kamoshida off. We need him to deal damage evenly amongst our party members, so our items are used more efficiently. We also use some elemental items to increase our damage output, and finally, with enough luck and no items left, we are able to defeat Kamoshida with just 8 HP remaining. We steal his treasure and go back to the real world. We spend the next few days improving our confidence and social stats, and Kamoshida finally admits to his crimes, officially completing our first mission. We sell the treasure from Kamoshida's palace, go celebrate with our prize money, end up getting nominated leader of the group, and name the Phantom Thieves after the most important personas in our party. We progress through the main story, unlock more confidence, namely Mishima for the XP gain, and Maruki for abilities during battles and to buff our max SP. Morgana also introduces us to mementos and gives us a task to complete that was posted on Mishima's fan site. Even though this is the first request, Joker's low damage output makes this fight very annoying, as he cannot be hit twice during the battle. As for the strategy, we just spam Heihas and some Dream Needles until we are lucky enough to win. We leave to continue the story, cheat through our exams, only to get an above average score, and finally meet Yusuke, the pupil of our next target, Madarame, an old artist that has been plagiarizing his pupils' work and getting rid of them when they are no longer useful. When Yusuke is confronted with these allegations, he threatens to call the police, leaving us with no choice but to start our mission to change Madarame's heart. The first half of the palace is very easy, having access still to a full party to avoid Joker taking all the damage. We take this opportunity to reach the roadblock and to level up some more for the mandatory fights to come. The first is against Nue, which is pretty easy. Using fire elemental items, he goes down in a couple of turns. The next one though is Yusuke's Awakening battle, where we are up against 5 enemies. First, using elemental ice items, I try to take down one Kopatengu per turn. Fortunately, they spend a turn buffing themselves, lowering the damage we take. Next is against Ippon Datara. Besides being extremely tanky and powerful enough to one-shot Joker, he also resists curse damage. To defeat him, we need all party members alive, not only to distract them, but also to take advantage of Yusuke and Ryuji's traits. With Joker also lowering the boss's accuracy, even if we are targeted, we will most likely dodge the one-hit kills coming our way. This fight took quite a few attempts, but in the end we were able to pull through, finishing with a critical Qliph into a follow-up attack. The biggest problem comes after this fight. Yusuke joins the team, unlocking the ability to take off party members, which means doing the rest of the palace solo. This causes the fights to go much faster, as now we spend less time guarding with our party members, or simply because we are the only target and die in a single turn. Well, let's just try to get through as much as possible and hope we do not encounter any difficult fights. The first boss is Kurama Tengu, for which we are severely lacking in the damage department and get one-shotted in return. I go get a few more levels and try to fight again. The strategy I found most success with is shocking the boss, followed by killing one of the minions as fast as possible, reducing the number of enemies spamming taunt. There is also no reason to take down both Koppa Tengus, as the boss will immediately summon one back. We also guard when the enemy is going to attack, and, with enough detox procs, we can win the fight. Next, we are up against 3 Makamis, but since we do not have access to electric damage, we leave the palace to better prepare for this fight, as it is currently impossible to survive a single turn. We come back with new armor and electric items, and we are now easily able to defeat them. We find our infiltration route and unlock the electric chair feature in the Velvet Room, allowing us to itemize our personas into some very helpful items. We can only craft one weapon, one accessory and one skill card at this point in the game, since we did not pick up the DLC items. Seeing as we are missing a lot of elements, even for the Madarame boss, I decide to use my one skill card on Rampage, an AoE physical attack that can hit up to 3 times. This will be our main source of damage for the boss fight. As for the rest of the elements, we can get them from negotiations or replace them with elemental items. For our accessory, I itemized Regent, giving us when equipped 3 strength and Autotaru Kage, raising our damage output. Finally, for the weapon, I used Arsene as it is the best option available. Before going to Madarame, I attempt to fight the third Wheelseed boss. We just lower its accuracy and start spamming nuclear attacks until it goes down. It is a bit RNG, but with enough attempts, we can defeat them and obtain the Crystal of Vanity, an interesting item that removes our weaknesses. With the deadline approaching, here is our build for the Madarame fight. We have Rampage as our main damage dealing ability. What we do not have, however, is electric magic attacks, that will have to be replaced with elemental items. With that, let's see if this is enough to beat Madarame. This fight requires a lot of things to happen in our favor. For one, we need to down at least one of the body parts with Rampage. With our current stats, it's a damage range if we hit all 3 attacks. If no one goes down, it's a reset. Our goal is to try to leave only the mouth alive, as it will be stuck reviving the right eye and attacking once every 3 turns. This allows us to always transition with full health to the next phase, as we can down the revived eye with a single attack. The problem, however, comes in the second phase. Although our magic stat is quite high, we still do not have enough damage to defeat most of the counterfeits, having to rely on Rampage hitting 3 times on everyone to kill at most one enemy. And even then, the enemy's damage output is too high for us to survive long enough. After a few attempts, I reached the conclusion that, with our current build, this fight is not feasible. Instead of overleveling Arsene even more, I decided to just fuse another one, trying to pass down better skills and to have a better control over Arsene's stats. Fusing Obarian with Regent, we get this Arsene. I gave him mostly the elements we cannot get at this point of the game, and some of the more useful for this palace to help us get our levels back. I also took this opportunity to change Arsene's mostly useless trait to Striking Weight, giving a 20% damage boost to physical attacks. I spent some time leveling up Arsene again, and here is the new build. Although we have access to Mazio, I will still use the electric items to avoid taking reflect damage against Madarame's copies. Arsene's strength stat is also almost double compared to before. This plus our new trait will allow us to reach the second phase much more consistently. We return to the fight, mostly with the same strategy, and are now able to handle more of Madarame's waves of counterfeits, reaching the final phase where he starts summoning copies with the sleep element. At this point the fight is basically over, and it's just a matter of time until we defeat Madarame with relative ease, at least compared with the previous attempts. A few days later, Madarame confesses to his crimes on live TV, and Yusuke officially joins the team, just to not participate in another battle ever again. As to actual important additions to our gameplay, we can now go to Kichijoji, unlocking mainly billiards and the temple. With billiards, we can increase our technical rank, boosting our technical attacks basically for free. The temple will be used later on to help us max our SP, but the gym will be the highest priority for the max HP. And as you can probably guess, the darts are pretty much useless and will never be used. Over the next few days, we make some progress in some confidence while waiting for the story to pick up. We start getting blackmailed by the student council president into finding the organization responsible for getting the students at the school involved in some shady business. We end up triggering her PTSD by calling her useless, causing Makoto to find Kaneshiro, the next palace ruler, all by herself. A bit convoluted, but at least we can now start the mission to change Kaneshiro's heart. We start with Makoto's awakening battle. It was nothing special. Although there is a nice enemy, it is somewhat unlikely for Joker to be targeted and we can defeat them easily. Coming back the next day, we now have the Showtime tutorial. I did not specifically mention this in the rules, but I will not allow this mechanic for any non-mandatory use, even the ones that Joker can perform, as it will technically always cause the other party members to attack. As for the rest of the fights, the first half of the palace does not pose any challenge, even against ice enemies. Just be careful that you can still easily die to a lot of the random fights in this palace, to avoid wasting time unnecessarily, unfortunately speaking from experience. The midway point boss is pretty easy. You can target the side enemy's weaknesses to dish out a lot of damage, and getting a lucky shock proc caused us to not even be hit once. In the second half though, with the enemies closing the level gap, we try to avoid fighting as much as possible. I also get stuck for multiple deaths in the fight against this pair of Rakshasas that would either land a critical hit or dodge my wind attacks. Getting through the clear hardest fight in the game, we defeat the next mandatory enemy with ease, and we attempt the Cerberus Wheel Seed fight. The only thing we have to watch out for is the high counter passive, so we just need an attempt where it doesn't trigger and the fight is also not very difficult. From here, there are no more real threats until the end. We find the treasure and unlock the Velvet Room alarm feature, expanding our electric chair options even more. The boss fight against Kaneshiro is quite a high jump in difficulty. He is a lot more tanky, has no weaknesses, and likes to spam very strong almighty attacks. At this point, we would just spend the entire fight healing, as you cannot survive 2 attacks. So I decide to take basically all the time possible until the deadline to buff our max HP and to farm some levels and better skills. This will be our loadout for the fight. We have a lot more HP thanks also to our life gun accessory, Agidyne, as it is the only heavy magic damage we have access to, plus our high magic stat will be our main source of damage, and also Lullaby for the second phase to put the bodyguards to sleep. With Joker stats, we can tank multiple March of the Piggies before needing to heal. Speaking of, another benefit of increasing our max HP is that it makes life stones much more efficient, and by far the best healing source we have access to at this point of the game. Of course this means that the Aram is completely power crept, as you can see here for comparison, and can be exchanged for anything else. With this, the first phase takes some time, but is very much doable. As for the second phase, it can be quite dangerous. I decided to use a higher defense armor instead of one that would give me immunity to sleep, so I will have to rely on dodges and detoxes to avoid the status condition. We also need to be careful of Make It Rain, that always deals around 60% of our current HP. These followed by the bodyguard's attacks can be quite a little combination. I have some close calls, but with enough Agidynes, we can make Kaneshiro run out of money and win the fight. Because we took so long to prepare, Kaneshiro just gives himself up to the police the next day, and Makoto officially joins the bench squad for the rest of the game. Again, we spend the following days until the next palace farming some confidence. During these peaceful times, Medjet, a group of hackers, threaten the Phantom Thieves to reveal their identities, or they will leak the Joker X catchy fanfictions the leader wrote in the past. Entering a state of panic, it is at this point we get approached by Alibaba the hacker that proposes to save Joker's embarrassing history in exchange for our help. We are tasked with clearing Futaba Sakura's palace, the daughter of Sojiro, starting our next mission. The first fight in the city is nothing special. Although the enemy has no weaknesses, we can just spam Agidynes to win. Next is against Mott. As long as we come prepared with wind and ice AoE attacks, it should be straightforward. Even if we get transformed into a rat, we have enough HP to survive a couple of turns and we can complete the fight. The other fight against Mott is mostly similar. Besides the slightly different attack pattern and the added initial enemies, it is also pretty easy. The only other notable battle left is against the third Wheel Seed boss, which is actually a threatening enemy due to having strong ice attacks. However, due to dodging a crucial concentrated Buffodine, I was able to beat it first try by just using Agidynes. We complete the last puzzle and unlock the route to the treasure, finally unlocking the Gallows, the strongest Velvet Room feature, greatly expanding our move pool. With this, the palace boss can be completely trivialized by just having Null or Repel physical, adding the Null Dizzy passive and the Aharon, and it becomes impossible to die. I had null physical as it was much faster to get for now, but it will be later upgraded to repel physical. As for the boss itself, we just spam triple downs like there is no tomorrow for an easy win. Now we have to wait for Futaba to awaken from her coma, probably because she found the fanfiction's Medjet was going to leak, and we take this time to get some gains at the gym to reach max HP and some more confident levels. After some days of waiting, Futaba awakens and deals with Medjet. As repayment for permanently scarring Futaba, we spend some time with her and she decides to join our team, also unlocking her confidant. This will give the most useful abilities during battles, giving buffs, healing us, and even letting us survive a lethal attack on max level. We go to Hawaii on a field trip, and when we return, Ryuji and Morgana have a fight, causing the team to separate. Except this makes no sense as the team is basically only Joker. As we chase down Morgana to tell him how stupid this whole conflict is, he just so happens to be with Haru, the daughter of our next target, Kunikazu Okumura, the CEO of essentially McDonald's. With Haru's help, we are able to start infiltration. First, we have Haru's awakening battle. Not much to say, these are no challenge at this point. The same goes for most of the mandatory battles, they are just waves of robots. As long as we have strong AoE attacks, we just breeze through this, with not even the possibility of taking damage, so I'll just skip going over them. The only notable fight here is against the Wheelseat Guardian, which can be completely trivialized if you have some sort of immunity to Bless. It was not the case for me, but I just used magic ointments from Takemi to survive the weakness hits, so not too bad either way. With no more challenging encounters in our path, we reach the treasure and prepare for the damage check that is this boss fight. Unfortunately, I do not know the exact stats I had, but it was not much different from this. One major difference is that the final build had repel physical, for some extra cheap damage on the reflects. Besides this, you could also bring, instead of a fire and bless attack, a wind AoE move, as 2 waves are weak against it, and a single target attack for the penultimate wave to have enough damage output to do the fight consistently. As for a strategy, it isn't much more complicated than attacking the weaknesses of the current enemies, aside from the aforementioned penultimate wave, where the enemies are too tanky to defeat them with just AoEs. For this wave, first I spend one turn doing nothing and buff my attack in the next one with an item, so that at the start of the next wave after the first retreats, I have the attack buff for the whole 2 turns. Next, I use a Psy item on the enemy with the buff defense and then do a double AoE for the most possible damage on this turn. Repeating for the second turn, plus the reflect damage from their attacks, I was barely able to finish the most difficult wave. The last enemy's only dangerous move is the concentrated Big Bang challenge that, as long as we guard, we can survive. Cognitive Harrow is basically just a cutscene, and after hitting Okumura once, the fight is over. While waiting for the deadline, we have a brief intermission with Kazumi in an unknown palace, where we have her awakening battle waiting, which is not dangerous in the slightest. She ends up not joining the team, which has the same outcome as her joining, and we continue the Confidant and Temple grind. We also achieve max technical rank for some bonus damage and guaranteed knockdowns on technicals. On the day of the deadline, Okumura confesses to his crimes, but tragically passes away on live TV. The Phantom Thieves are now considered wanted criminals, even more than before, and are quite lost on how they should proceed. It is at this point that Takechi approaches us, revealing he knows who we are, and suggests joining us on infiltrating Sai's palace. On the first day of the infiltration, we only have Akechi's battle, which is no challenge at all. This trend continues over the next days, so I will skip around to the more relevant fights. The one against Norn can be somewhat annoying due to it having the Aharon, but with an attack buff from Futaba plus a critical hit from Triple Down, we easily clear the fight. Next is the Naga boss fight, which is also no challenge. It is only slightly tankier than normal enemies, but has nowhere near close to the damage output necessary to be dangerous. We then have the gauntlet where the gimmick is that we have to play as we have been playing throughout the game, so not a challenge again. The last chance to have a difficult fight is the Wheelseat Guardian, which again does not have enough damage to be threatening. With the route to the treasure set, we now have to wait for the last day of the deadline as per Akechi's recommendation. He also expresses his distrust in Joker's ability to lead the Phantom Thieves and challenges for a 1v1 fight. I have no clue what this guy's on. I guess he didn't really pay attention when we soloed the entire palace just now. Joker completely destroys him and we complete his confidant for now. For the rest of the deadline, we complete some more confidants, including Futaba, and on the last day we also finish Maruki. We finally send the calling card and this is the build. We are missing the passives for the elements we are weak to, but I am not too worried, as the actual dangerous phase is the last one that uses almighty attacks. Besides, Sai is not guaranteed to roll Ice or Bless, so surely we won't even have to deal with this kind of attacks, right? The fight starts with the betting phase, and although we have the you will win mentality, we don't seem to be able to call any round correctly. It's almost like she's cheating, but we are unable to prove it. Still, we did not give up here, as 99% of gamblers quit before they hit peak, so we keep on trying. This is where I found out that we don't actually need other party members to advance to the next phase, as Futaba will call out Sai on her shenanigans and transition to the real battle. On the first roll, she obviously lands on ice to at least try to make things challenging. However, as we consistently keep debilitating her, she does almost no damage, and adding the reflect damage from her follow-up physical attack makes it almost better for her to target our weakness. We keep the damage rolling, and finally the roulette lands on Almighty. In the supposed difficult phase, Sai actually just deals so much damage to herself through the reflects that we barely have to do anything. Even her strongest attack cannot defeat us from full HP, so we easily complete the fight. After stealing her treasure, we notice a large number of police officers that have entered the palace, and, in an attempt to let everyone escape, Joker distracts the police, leading to the initial sequence of the game where we get caught and return to the present. It is then revealed that Akechi was a traitor, that the team knew all along, and that the Phantom Thieves used the opportunity of Joker getting caught to make him believe that we were dead, while also getting Sai to our side. During this process, we find out the true mastermind over the mental shutdowns, the presidential candidate Shido, also the one that got Joker arrested, and we take this chance to make him the next target for a change of heart. As we infiltrate the palace, we start collecting 5 letters of introduction in order to reach Shido. The first one is against Yamata no Orochi, which just keeps buffing itself to use a super powerful ice attack. Although we still don't have an ice immunity, we can just use a magic ointment to be completely impervious to damage. Though the same cannot be said for the second letter, against Fornius. My build was horrible for this fight. First, I did not have electric damage. Second, I had no resistance to either Brainwash or Psy. And third, I had Diaharon, so there was a chance that I would fully heal the boss. But even with all this in mind, having extremely good detox luck and using Debilitate allowed me to dodge some of the technical Psy hits. On the second try, I was miraculously able to defeat the boss. Keep in mind that all this trouble could be avoided with even a little amount of preparation. The next letter boss is mostly physical damage oriented, so, as we have Repel Physical, is no challenge at all. The trend of refusing to prepare continues for the next mandatory fight against the 3 Baphomets, as we are completely vulnerable to their ice attacks, causing the fight to require some attempts to both be hit with as few ice attacks as possible and to avoid being shocked by the electric attacks. With some luck, we are able to get through the fight, but don't do it like me, just get Repel Ice or something. Either way, I'm sure I will learn my lesson and just get rid of my weaknesses in time for the next fights. Next is the 4th letter of introduction boss. The enemy Oberon has this very cool Bless insta-kill attack, to which we are weak to. Due to my stubbornness, this fight takes a lot longer than it needs to. Again, with some kind of immunity to Bless, this fight becomes harmless. However, if you decide to do as I did, there is actually a strategy, somewhat. As long as one of the Titanias is down at the start of the enemy's turn, Oberon will spend one of his actions summoning another one, and if you have enough Homunculi plus Futaba's one-time save, you can survive quite a few attacks. Before getting the final letter, we have another Baphomet fight, this time against 4 of them. Fortunately, I am never punished by my stubbornness and survive one wave of attacks to win on the first try. As for the boss itself, it has a curse insta-kill move that can easily ruin one attempt if not prepared with curse immunity, but this time I was actually prepared with magic ointments to dodge the insta-kill and to reflect some of his normal curse attacks that actually deal more damage than our own magic, making this fight also pretty straightforward. We have finally collected all 5 letters, but we are not out of the woods yet, as we have the long-awaited Akechi rematch left. It starts against Cerberus and Kuchulain, but there is nothing to worry about as they are enraged and hit themselves to death. Next is first phase Akechi, who decides he should go first and hits us with a Bless attack followed by Curse. But seeing as this does barely over half of our HP, we are not really in much danger. We can just use magic ointments to handle them, until he decides to use Charge into a physical attack into killing himself, and transition to the next phase. At this point, for some reason, he stops using Bless attacks in favor of fire. And although he puts up magic barriers, we have almighty attacks that bypass it. We only need to guard when he is going to use Leviathan, and the fight is also pretty straightforward. We max out Akechi's rank just before he dies to himself and leave the palace to prepare to send a calling card. We again wait some days, get more confident levels, reach max SP with the temple and get everything we need for the fight. Here is our slightly more optimized build. We finally have Repel Ice and Bless, and also changed to have a more almighty focused approach, with Concentrate to do more damage. The random Bless attack is because we have Bless Amp on our stat boosting item, but can be easily replaced by some other passive, and for now we don't need to worry about it. We send the calling card and start the fight against Shido. This fight automatically registers other party members, which is slightly annoying as they will consume Futaba's one-time save if they would die. Shido has quite a few phases with different resistances. When we can, we'll use Makoga on as it does more damage, and when resisted, we'll use Almighty. The fight could not be any simpler. For now, the only thing we have to worry about is the charged attack in the Tomb phase. Everything else we can handle as we reach the Samael phase. In the first half, he cannot even damage us, he only has physical and bless moves until he learns Megidolan at half health, but still nothing too dangerous. Then is a true Samael phase. He now has access to a lot more moves, but does not have the damage output to back it up, and we are never in danger of dying. Near the end of the fight, he decides to throw out of the arena our dead teammates to have a 1v1 with us. Apparently he didn't notice we were doing it already, and although he gets slightly stronger moves, it is nothing we cannot handle. Seeing all in his demise, he decides to go out on his own terms, and we win with the reflect damage of Tyrant's Judgment. Shido fails to stop his change of heart in the real world, and ends up confessing to his crimes, marking our final mission complete. Or so it would seem, but something doesn't feel right. Everyone is acting as if nothing happened. Joker cannot allow no one knowing he has been defeating every boss alone up to this point, and so he decides the target of our next mission. We will change the heart of the population and go straight to the depths of mementos. As we have been diligently clearing mementos throughout the game, we go straight to the last layer, where, after some puzzles and easy fights, we find the Holy Grail that is seemingly indestructible. With its absolute control over the will of humanity, it starts erasing the Phantom Thief's existence. In an attempt to rebel against fate, Joker fuses the Velvet Room Twins to restore Lavenza's true form, and reveal that the one behind everything was the fake Igor all along. We save our teammates, and it's time for one last expedition through the last layer of mementos, the Qliphoth World. This area is composed of some of the strongest enemies in the game, including boss fights against some archangels on our way to the final showdown against God. The first archangel is Uriel, accompanied by two angels. We are not really in danger of dying, as the main source of damage is physical, which we reflect. The annoying part is the full heal the angels can do. I only realized this in a fight further ahead, but the angels will use Recarmdra when low on health. So, if you just focus Uriel, this fight can be dealt with much quicker. Up next is Raphael, who just spams charged sword dances, and we win with the huge reflect damage he deals to himself. After that is against Gabriel. This one can actually do damage to us, but fortunately the boss likes to spam Divine Judgment, which we are immune to, and seeing as we were never shocked by the electric attacks, plus the reflect ice damage, this fight was also not a challenge. Our final obstacle is Michael, which is basically all the previous archangels combined, with higher damage output. This one can be quite dangerous, but seeing as he cannot kill in a single turn unless he shocks you, we are actually surprisingly safe, and because of Maruki's confident, we never run out of SP, making drawn out fights not an issue. It was during this fight that I realized how the angels worked, so after a few turns of only attacking Michael and healing when necessary, the fight can also be easily completed. Before going to the final fight, we have to prepare a bit more. After raising Arsene to level 99, the pinnacle of power for a persona, here is our build. I went with a fully almighty approach, with both almighty boost and hemp. I also removed Repel Bless as there are no bless attacks to worry about, in favor of Enduring Soul, to give extra insurance if we get unlucky. I also changed my item to have the insta-heal passive for the various scene ailments during the fight. With everything ready, we jump into the first fight against the Holy Grail. It is important to note that we need at least one other party member to be able to stop the Holy Grail from healing, or the fight is completely impossible. We use Ryuji and just block with him when it is his turn as usual. Like Shido, it is actually worse having party members as they will consume Futaba's one-time save, but at least we have Enduring Soul to not be too punished by a mistake. As for the fight itself, the Grail has 3 main moves, and from my attempts, he uses an AoE move followed by Arrow of Light, and then the other AoE move, followed again by Arrow of Light. With this pattern, it can never kill us in just 2 turns, and so we are completely safe to do damage with little risk of dying. Even the Charge Eternal Light has no chance to kill from full, and even if the boss does it at an awkward time, we still have a revive with full health. With the first phase dealt with, it's time for the real fight against the new god of humanity, Yaldabaoth. Compared to the other fights in the mid and late game, this is by far the most difficult fight of them all. He has a very high damage output, plus a lot of very powerful debuffs. Fortunately for us, we do not need to care about the debuffs, as we will always heal them at the start of our turn. The most dangerous one would be Rage, but since it will always be applied last, we are never with the super lower defense. And so, here's the game plan. The boss can take away almost 80% of our health in a single turn, so we need to keep healing every turn until either we dodge something, Futaba heals or buffs us, or he spends an action reviving a weapon. With our concentrated Megiddo allowance, we can always take down the revived weapons in a single hit, so this is what we need to make time for. After a lot of turns spamming heals looking for openings, Yaldabaoth enters the last phase of the fight, where he revives with full health all of the weapons and prepares to do a very powerful attack. This is actually a free turn where he can deal some damage to the weapons, as it takes 2 turns to charge. I did not notice at first and wasted an opportunity to do damage. But we got lucky and Futaba cast Heat Riser on us. With the increased defense, we are much less likely to die in the following turns. We tank the next Divine Apex thanks to our revive, and from here we can easily finish the fight. Yaldabaoth, however, still insists on not giving up, throwing everything he has at us. With our backs against the wall, Joker gets one last anime power-up, awakening Arsene to its ultimate form. Now using Satanael, with his big ass gun, we shoot COD in the face, marking the end of the vanilla story of Persona 5. What's left now is the royal content and some miscellaneous fights that I am curious to try. Skipping through most of the story, some stuff happens and Joker, Akechi and Kazumi end up in the mysterious palace we went into in the middle of the game. As we progress, we find Dr. Maruki, who appears to be this palace's ruler. He reveals Kazumi was being impersonated by her sister Sumire, who is now out of commission, and Joker joins forces with Akechi to fight Astur. It was nothing special as we just two-shot the boss. Here, we unlock Joker's Showtime attack with Akechi that, as mentioned earlier, will not be used aside from this one instance. We leave the palace and spend some days speaking with each of the Phantom Thieves to wake them up from their dream reality. Not sure why, as we don't really need them. Aside from Futaba maybe. Either way, we return to the palace to rescue Sumire, but we end up fighting her instead. We one-shot the first phase, but the second is a bit tankier, as she heals herself every 2 turns. Fortunately, our concentrated Megiddo allowance deal more damage than she can heal, plus the occasional reflect damage, and we eventually win the fight. Finally, we start the mission to conquer the palace. We obliterate the first section's enemies, until we cannot continue and have to go to Mementos. Since there are no mandatory fights here, we reach the top with no issue. We return to the palace the next day and finish everything up, as there are no difficult fights left. Now we have to wait for a few days for the deadline so we can fight Maruki. Besides working on some confidants, including getting Futaba's final persona, we also do some bonus fights that are available just to see how it goes. The first is against Jose at the end of Mementos. The fight has no complex mechanics. In the beginning, he just randomly uses an elemental attack that does pretty low damage, until we reach the second phase, where every 2 turns he uses his fireworks attack. A very powerful almighty damage move, forcing us to cycle between guard and heal until we get a heal from Futaba or a defense buff. Or seeing as we have a Reflect Ice and Bless, we could just wait until he knocks himself out. But the fight is basically just that, waiting for the right opportunity to attack. Alternatively, we could bring the Firm Stance passive for reduced damage taken. Either way, we complete this fight, and it's time for the Velvet Room fights against the previous protagonists. The gimmick here is that they will be switching their personas every turn, changing their elemental affinities as well. Another thing is that their attack pattern is always the same, so you can plan your heals for the right moments. For these fights, I will be using an almighty focused strategy. I was trying to complete the fight solo under the number of turns for the bonus points, but I was not able to even with builds made to target their weaknesses. Maybe if we use the elemental items every turn to knock them down for the bonus damage, we might have done it. First we have Persona 3's protagonist. He only has 2 dangerous moments during each cycle of attacks. The concentrated Door of Hades, an almighty that can insta-kill that we have to guard regardless, and a charged Riot Gun. Not as dangerous, but still deals a lot of damage with a chance to crit. Aside from these 2, there is nothing we should be worried about. Even with no immunity to any of his attacks, this fight is pretty straightforward. The same can be said about the fight against Persona 4's protagonist. Although this is easier in comparison to our build. We are immune to like 7 of his attacks, with one of them being a charged Asutobi. So, the only dangerous move is Myriad Roots. We also try a slightly more offensive build with all of the amps and boosts we can. It was so damage oriented, I didn't even take a healing ability. I don't know how, but we were also able to defeat him very easily, not even needing to heal during the fight. With everything done, we can finally give the calling card to Maruki and prepare for the final boss of the game. Here is our build, a bit different from usual. Maruki has physical, nuclear, bless, and almighty attacks. Seeing as we have to watch out for the time we take in this fight, as after a while he will basically one-shot us, the reflect damage will help us increase our damage output, to get through as fast as possible. We also have different elemental attacks, to help defeat the tentacles to increase the damage dealt to Azathoth. Just a small note, the wind attack is a bit redundant. Just fire and nuclear are enough to deal with all the tentacles affinities, so it can be changed for something else. With all this, the first 2 phases deal basically no damage to us, as we reflect almost everything and we have enough damage ourselves to defeat Azathoth. The more annoying part is the next phase against Adam Kadmon. He starts with Origin Light, followed by Revitalized Soul, 2 powerful AoE attacks where the latter also heals him. From this point forward, he will be constantly using 1 Grand Palm 2 consecutive turns, a very powerful attack that can almost one-shot Joker from full HP, and then waiting for a turn. The only thing we can do is to constantly heal and attack when he does nothing. Seeing as we are technically at no risk of dying, we do this for about 10 minutes until we reach the next phase. Those who have done this fight will know that, from here on, this becomes a glorified cutscene where we literally cannot lose. So, after a couple more minutes, we defeat Maruki and complete Persona 5 Royal using only Joker and Arsene. I have to say, for my first challenge run of the Persona series, this was actually quite fun. Although the difficulty seemed to be mostly focused on the first 2 palaces, and even then, if I had taken the DLC items, these 2 would also have been much easier. Either way, the progression itself felt very satisfying, and if you have the patience to endure the first 2 palaces, I recommend it as a somewhat easy challenge. And to avoid the suffering of the beginning, just take the items. It's not worth the extra time for being stubborn. As for my next plans, I will probably attempt a solo run on Persona 3 Reload, as I really want to replay the game and this seems like a nice excuse to do it. Either way, thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you on my next video.